What up, guys? This is Mike Gano doing a video for DeucesCracked, and I gotta say I'm pretty stoked. For a few reasons, actually. This is my first video for DeucesCracked. I am honored to be doing this for you guys. I haven't played in a few weeks. I've been quite busy working on a few personal projects. I write a strategy blog at Pokerinabox.com. Here is a glimpse preview. This best online poker sites. I've been working on this Uber blog entry for a while. So just finished that up. Glad to get it out the door. And now I can turn back to what I truly love, which is playing. So there's that. And the last thing, which of course I'm excited about, is I'm going to Hawaii tomorrow. My wife and I are going to take a 2-week vacation. So that's what's going on here. And I'm going to spare you a big bio or this is about me right now, because I'll get one on DeucesCracked that you can read in detail, I'm sure. Suffice it to say that I've been playing for a long time, over a decade. I've been a professional for about at least the same amount of time. And I've recorded tons and tons of videos throughout my career, as well as done a bunch of coaching. So that's me in a nutshell. Now let's jump right into some action, shall we? I've got 2 tables, as you can see, of 888 snap. 888 is my bread and butter. The 200 no limit 6 max cash, more specifically. So we will let it get fast and furious. And the nice thing about snap or zoom or fast fold or whatever your variant of choice for fast folding is that you can sit out, right? So as we go, if something interesting comes up that I want to talk about in more depth, this is close on the right, we can sit out and discuss further. I think this could be interesting to you guys for a few different reasons. One is, as you can see, I don't use a HUD. You can't actually use a HUD in the snap games on 888 if you were not aware, which, you know, might help you guys that play on Bovada, or Bodog. So of course, on those sites or on that site, you can use a session HUD for the regular games, but you can't use, you know, if you're playing the zone game on Bovada, you can't use a HUD for that, right? It breaks down. So I expect that this might be useful, you know, for a bunch of you guys in the States. I'm in Canada, which is why I'm from the States, but I'm in Canada now, living on Vancouver Island, which is why I can play here, fortunately. But yeah, I do not use a HUD, and I kind of like that, I gotta say. We'll be bouncing around a bit as we go today, but one thing we can get into is note-taking and labeling, right? So of course, since we're not using a HUD, it all comes down to your notes, right? So let's try this. I've got a few colors here right away. You can see, you know, I've got a big box full of notes on this guy that has the bull icon. We have all these different colors, right? You can pause and check those out. And I try my best to get a label on everybody. And I'll talk about the labels as they're appropriate to the hand we're discussing. So here we're going to bet just half pot. And we're getting to it gets us to the showdown a little cheaper. Once he calls, we are blocking ace, queen, queen, jack. He could have king, queen. We double check our notes on the player. Pulls big bluffs, inducible, but we'll check down air. He's passive. Big river bets with nothing versus weak. So we'll go into the tank on this one. I have a bet pot script that we are blocking the flush, but that's also, I don't think that's very meaningful here. Like he'd have to have a busted draw, right? That he's turning into a bluff, and it's hard to put him on that. Even though we're blocking ace, queen, queen, jack, Like what? I mean, Jack 9, like, yeah, it's, and could be maybe Ace Jack, but you know, we push against that. King Jack. Yeah, we're going to fold. So he pulls big bluffs, but he's still a decent reg. As far as my labeling goes, I like to break my my regs down into a few different categories. Who's this guy? We're gonna call because I didn't have enough time to check my notes on him. But as I was saying, I like to have 3 levels of regs. This guy's tricky. I'm gonna lead out. You'll see that I like to use a leading game. We pick up a draw, but he could be calling pretty wide. So I'm going to bet again with increased equity and hope we see a fold. This is interesting. We're checking. I don't even know that we're check folding. It's a pretty passive, huh? We can add passive to the list. Passive, right? And this guy, is this the triple barrel big blind versus blind with air? You know, I could start out inducing him, but I'm way ahead. You know, queens and aces are the same. Not the best card because of the hands I'm ahead of. Like it's 8s through 10s, maybe 7s. I think we'll check a street. With a 7-6 suited, we could 3-bet. It didn't have to be a fold. The thing is here, am I going to get 2 more streets? Aces and kings, I would try. Queens. Triple barrel big, blind versus blind with air. So we'll just check again. We're going to check call the river. Ace king gets there. You know, he could be bluffing here with ace king. Triple barrel big with air. Already we've got a tough decision. Look at this. So am I at the top of my range? We block king queen. He'd have to be turning something like 9s and 8s into a bluff. Which I don't think he's likely to do. I think he's got ace king in his range here. So we're gonna fold this. One thing that I think may separate me from some regs that don't that maybe don't win as much as I do. I've had a 6 to 8 big blind per 100 win rate for the last 100,000 hands at least in this game. Is making big river folds. So I've done some Twitch streaming, and I find that for a lot of my river folds, the people watching are constantly surprised. You know, that arguably I think could be in a hero check calling range, but I'm still going to make the fold because it's what I do. I make the big folds on the river. So I was talking about, you guys were listening, breaking reg ranges down into more levels. So what that means is I've got, actually, let's squeeze this hand. I have expert reg, I have average reg, and I have bad reg. That's one way to do it. Then I break it out a little further. Get up my notes and I can get a little more specific with you. So we've got greenish fish, blue, light blue is calling station, dark blue is rock. We also have rock in there. Average reg, good reg, bad reg is this yellow up here. So you'll note it's not the same as what the things actually say. That's just the default. And then this last one is Maniac, this like half color here. I also use the bony fish, as I call it. I think other people call this bony fish as well, as a Maniac. But I do, for the most part, I stay away from these, as you'll see on 888. I stay away from the pictures because you see how there's a paper clip on these colored things. For whatever reason, the picture doesn't show a paper clip, so it doesn't tell me if I've got notes on that player. I have to actually click it up like that. Bud Fox will fold. What else can I tell you? So there are some interesting things about my style that may be a bit different than other people. I really vary my bet sizes. I think a lot of players use rather consistent sizes for fear of giving away sizing tells on their game. Whereas I'm of the mind that there's always a perfect bet size, even pre-flop, and I endeavor to find that. And so I will often tend to skew larger with bigger hands and smaller with smaller hands or bluffs, unless, I think someone like a reg might be trying to pick up on that. If I ever fear that a reg might indeed be potentially picking up on my sizings, then I'll just reverse, right? Then I'll just give off reverse sizing tells. I think that's way better than getting, really stuck on one size you use all the time. Or another way of saying that is, as far as sizings go, I'd rather be hyper exploitative than nice and balanced. Within reason. And we'll try to dig into some specific examples today so you understand what I mean by that. I mean, it's mostly with fish. I'll go really big or really small versus some fish. Okay, we got a Russian here. This will be fun. For my stateside friends, the Russians, if you've only been playing in the States, Russians are known to be hyper aggressive, and it's funny how often it plays out. So we'll just be hero calling down 3 streets. Once he checks, we're going for 3 streets of value, no doubt. But as I was saying, I really vary my sizes versus the fish. So, if I've got aces and a fish min raises under the gun, I am 4xing his raise. If I've got king queen off, then I could be 2xing his raise, right? So really mixing that up. This is the guy that, same guy before that jammed the river. It's going to be tough to play him on a club. Some players I might check call twice, but we check call him twice, even if the club comes, and he's going to put us to a tough spot on the river, right? As he did earlier. So yeah, his range when he jams the river, I think, is ace king and pocket tens. And bluffs. There's no doubt he's got bluffs in his range, right? The question of whether we call is simply, does he have enough bluffs, right? And my on-the-spot analysis was no. This guy is a reg. He's pretty good. He's a winning player. I do a lot of reg analysis. So in a game where it is different from Bovada in that I see the player names, right? So I can do analysis away from the table. I'll just call this one. And I do a lot. I spend a lot of time studying the better regs in my game, trying to get reads on them, and building those notes back into the little boxes. anything I can do to give me an edge. And that's one more reason I kind of like the fact that these games go HUDless, because, I kind of think that I can work harder, do my homework, and put more work in away from the table studying the other guys than I'm pretty sure they're going to do against me, such that I can get an advantage. Because I think in the HUD world, and don't get me wrong, I have a super elaborate Uber HUD that I've used when I play on Stars and Full Tilt and other places. And even in the regular games on 888, you can use a HUD, and I do use a HUD there when I play those games. But in the HUD world, as I was starting to say, Arbuse, he's a pretty good reg. I'm going to bet. He's going to call 3 streets with ace high, whereas he might check back a street with, like, top pair, no kicker. Not ace high, but you know what I mean. I'm really not concerned about the turn. It's not going to slow us down. If he raises, of course, we just call. We call, check, decide, river. But in the HUD world, I think your margins are lower, in a sense, where everyone's sort of watching a lot of the same videos and getting the same ideas on how to get maximal use out of your HUD, right? So your edges are thinner. Whereas I think in this scenario, and part of this comes from coaching a lot of guys that, when I make suggestions like, hey, go play on 888, they're like, ooh, you can't use a HUD there. No way, I'm not comfortable without a HUD, right? So many people are not comfortable without HUDs, which is too bad because you can't use a HUD in a casino. So I think it's an important skill to develop, even if you play in a game where you can use a HUD. Highly encourage you to turn it off from time to time. It's interesting how much more you'll find yourself focusing on the action and the texture and and your implied ranges and so on. It's also fun in these games, just like Zoom, because you can run up pretty big stacks. You're getting so many hands per hour per table. I tend to play 3 of these. I'm just doing 2 for the video to make sure I've got, a little more mind space for you guys. I'm gonna squeeze this. The guy to my right, his range is lower. Both are obviously plus EV. Obviously calling is plus EV. But since I've got position on Ship It, I kind of want to raise, and I don't mind if he calls, and we can pot control post flop, check back a lot of flops, right? I just rather, it feels like this is going to be a bit more plus EV than playing it any other way. It'd be really interesting if he came back with a re-raise there, right? I'm not even sure what I do, because we're like at the bottom of our value squeeze range, right? So but yeah, I usually play 3 tables, and I get about 500 hands an hour doing so, which is a good rate for me. I find if I get more hands per hour than that, if I start, I'm not someone that, can 4 table these fast fold tables. You can only play 3 of them on 888 for a given level. So I could play 3 200 NL snap, and then add a 4th of 100 NL snap, or 400 NL. I'm not rolled for 400 NL snap, but it's diminishing returns is my best guess for myself. So let's keep it going big. But I think 3 is also kind of an awkward number for video production, because, when we do our videos happen in boxes, and boxes are made by 2 or 4 tables, not 3. So this is a rock. That's what the blue means. We also see he's a short stack. We're just gonna go big on turn river. Ace king, ace queen, unlikely in his range. I'm betting the river pretty fast because it's a bit of a timing tell. Like I'm almost positive I have the best hand there, and it, you know, he's an average player. He's not a great player, so I feel like he'll fall for kind of basic timing tells. And a basic timing tell is if someone acts a little faster, it could seem a little weaker, right? You know, it can go both ways. Who's this? Is the reg? This is on the edge for me. I'm gonna fold. I'll play it tight versus a pretty strong reg. And slightly deeper here, so making a slightly looser call from cutoff. But yes, I am a big fan of 888. I feel like I'm one of the lone champions. I've been playing of the site, as in I champion the site. I've been playing here for over a year and enjoying it very much. And a lot of my peers and colleagues and students and various other people in my tribe, you know, are kind of haters on the site, and that's fine with me because the main thing people cite is the high rake, which is true. But as far as I'm concerned, you know, as long as I keep rocking the big win rate, I'm happy here. You know, I believe that the rake and rewards program differences between this site and stars, for example, is not a big enough deal to you know, to stop me from playing here in light of my win rate. So that could change because stars, as most of you know, has wrecked their rewards program a bit, right? They're skewing things toward attracting more recreational players, right? We're going to go pretty small here on the river. Yeah, it's a blocker. So that has had, you know, it's not going to make as much a difference, the stars changes for 2016 at the lower stakes, but at my stakes it does. I mean, I already have friends that are making the move over from stars to 888, and I don't want more regs, obviously, to come over into this game. But it is what it is. If these games get tougher, hey, that just means I have to work harder. So how about some more discussion on notes? Like I said, it's really what that's what it comes down to in these games, is to some degree taking better notes than other players. So I use shorthanded, check, 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 bluff. That's what some of this stuff is. Tank, jam, river. I work in timing. We've been talking a little about timing today. I'm still just going to check call 2 streets. I don't think I can. It's all about how many streets I can get, right? I don't think I can go bet and get 2 easy calls. So we're just going to keep it as a bluff catcher, right? I believe this guy checked back the flop, so we're going to fire turn and river. Interesting that he checks back the flop. That's he's going to get a passive from me on that. And then I'm going to pot the river here. I don't, you know, it's unlikely that he's got an ace. He probably did since he raised me. But did I get that? Just making sure I got the action right. I believe I did. Yeah, it's he checks back the flop, doesn't he? Yeah, okay. He checks back the flop. So unlikely, you know, he could be slow playing an ace. Also that I just noticed he limped under the gun. So it looks like he slow played an ace and limped under the gun. Let's see if I can grab that in between. That's which is, ooh, look at these, a pretty darn good indicator, plus his name, that our friend is a fish. So we're going to get the green label. Does everyone use green for fish? I feel like it's quite universal. We will not be slow playing this. Snap call the jam. %, 3-bet. So I do try to get a lot of, this is another thing I do with my notes on this site, is I'll frequently put, put the stats right in there, right? So we got a 27, 21, 10. That's VPIP pre-flop 3-bet, standard. C-bets by street, showdown numbers. I'm a big fan of showdown numbers. So again, don't get me wrong, I'm all over the stats. I just can't show them on the screen. That's because of how the site works. So this is 1 soft flop, went to showdown, 1 money at showdown. I use all of those, and I use them in conjunction with each other. Like I'll use pairs of them. Like using 1 soft flop together with went to showdown, right? Someone has a higher 1 soft flop and a higher, let's say someone's got a 30 went to showdown, right? I'll give you an example of using a pair of stats together. And this is fun. Let's sit out for this one, shall we? If someone has a 30 went to showdown and they have a high 1 soft flop, well, if we compare that to someone with a lower 1 soft flop and a high went to showdown, then the former, the guy with the high 1 soft flop, might be a bit more of a calling station. Okay, think it through. The guy that is effectively more aggressive and still going to showdown a lot is probably doing a lot of calling, when he's not being aggressive. Or maybe it's easier to see it from the other side. If someone is passive, let's say his 1 soft flop is 40, he's just generally not putting out a lot of bets and winning as much, and going to showdown a lot, then it could be that he's going to showdown a lot just because he's passive, right? So if he checks back the flop and turn, maybe he's just going to showdown a lot. We can throw 1 money at showdown into the mix, right? If this player that let's take this guy now. Let's say you got a guy that has a high 1 soft flop, a high went to showdown, and a high 1 money at showdown. If that's the case, then he's probably pretty good, right? There's a back of the envelope calculation where you can add 1 soft flop with 1 money at showdown. And if that number is over 100, the player's probably pretty good, right? If he looks like a reg and he's got those two numbers over 100 together, he's probably pretty good. Whereas if you throw it the other direction, if you say this guy's 50, right? So really trying to take down a lot of pots. 30 went to showdown. And like 40, something really low, like 40, 42, maybe 44, 1 money at showdown. So usually losing at showdown, dude is spewy, okay? Dude is not a good player. He's super aggressive. He wins when he sees the flop a lot, but not at showdown, right? But yet he goes to showdown a lot, right? So those are all, these are examples on how you can really tell some interesting stories about your opponent and get to the bottom of their style by taking all these numbers into consideration together. Let's get a few more in here. Yeah, big fan of the showdown numbers. I'll throw aggression into the mix, and I don't know if I had it in there, but I'll put up street by street aggression sometimes, or overall aggression, depending on how many hands we have on said villain. Still got a pack for the trip. Of course, my wife's got her. She's all packed. We're divers, and we've got the dive gear together, but still got to dig out my bathing suit and warm weather clothes. Our Buse, he's a funky player. Kind of. He's loose, 31-23. He's around all the time. It's not like he's a fish, but you know, that's pretty wide. High cold call percentage, which is, that's what my notes said. But that, you know, as soon as you see the high VPIP, low pre-flop raise, big gap there, that alone tells you he's probably calling a lot pre-flop. Bony fish. So the other thing I get from the peanut gallery when I'm streaming on Twitch quite often is, oh my God, your game is so fishy. It is a far cry from the skill level and stars. And I mentioned at the beginning, I just put out a blog on the best poker sites of 2016, in my opinion, and my team. I've got some guys that help me write it and do the research. And one of the themes to come out of it is just, you know, how stars, yes, is the they've got everything, right? They've got the traffic, they've got the slickest software, they've got the best rakeback deals, but the games are just not, you know, they're tough. The best players, they got the best players in the world. They go there because it's so cush. Whereas here, the software ain't bad, but the main thing is the games are so soft. I've heard 888 called the Bovada of Europe, right? Because you can play on this in Europe. You can't play on Bovada in Europe. Let's see if we're going to get a 4-bet from our friend. Tank Jam River. So as I bemoan players potentially coming over here, and here I am giving a video on how awesome I think 888 is, I recognize that, hey, that may entice some of you to come over. And so in the grand scheme of things, I don't mind. You know, I'm when it comes down to it, I'm up for a good game of poker, and I'm confident that, you know, I can stay ahead of the pack. So I'm just stoked to be doing this for you guys, and happy to feature my home territory, because I don't think, you know, there's quite as many people doing 888 videos out there. So if you're considering a move, consider this your test drive. Super dry, table 2. This is larger. I'm going to make a fold just because the stack sizes are larger because I was isolating. If it was just an open raise, and can we get 3 streets here? You notice I snapped on the river. He's a maniac, right? And he can have absolutely anything on the river. So easy call. Easy call. The question is like whether we value bet the river, right? I think that's the interesting question. We could do something like bet really small and try to take advantage of the fact that he's a maniac and then just snap call a raise. You know, we'll see a 9 sometimes, but we're trying to leverage the fact that the dude is a drooler. It's a lot of chips out there. Is that really necessary to show that many 1-cent chips? Come on. One thing I've done with my BetPot script, one feature, is that it, tad deeper here with Bud, it will show the stack sizes. It'll convert the stack sizes into big blinds, which I have recently started doing and I really like. But I find, again, from the Twitch feedback, that this is not easy, actually. I'm going to make a fold here. We've got other people that could theoretically still raise. We'll fold and watch for the crowd. I'm going to check this down. I just don't know that I don't think I'm going to get 2 streets here. You know, on the river maybe, but we'll roll it. I'm going to go big on the river. because, you know, now it's weird and unbelievable. See if we can get a hero call from eights. Like this, I'm doing something that doesn't make sense, right? It's a pretty non-standard play. I'm trying to do, like, why would I check 3 streets and bet big, right? Doesn't make sense. So I'm trying to play a little tricky there. This guy looks like a fish. I'm throwing out a big bet on the flop because I want to stack him when he's got, you know, 7s, 8s, 9s. How did this play out? So another player did end up, I mean, he was, okay, it's not giving me any buttons to replay the hand. So I guess that's all we're going to see is the river hands there. Purple, again, bad reg. Orange, solid reg, average reg. Maybe closer to average than solid is a better thing to say. He's not the best reg. And so a little more on, I don't want to sit out because I really want to, as sort of a theme today, on something I think I can help you guys with or provide value is, again, on the note-taking. So I'll tell you my system. How about this? Let's do this. I think this is a good stopping point. Once we squeeze a little more value from this guy. He checked back the flop, so more likely to have a 10, right? And I'm just going as big as I think he'll call with a 10. I think he's betting his draws, like flush draws, straight draws. I think he'll bet those a lot on the flop, right? So when he checks back the flop, it's just, and calls the turn, far more likely to be 10x, maybe a 7, 8s, 9s. So we're trying to maximize our value here, obviously. And at some point we start to lose 9s and 8s when we bet with our size. If I bet 12, do I get called by 9s and 8s? If so, then 12 is probably a better size. If we still think he folds 9s and 8s to a $12 bet, then I like my bet. So on note-taking, this is how I do it. If, first of all, I assign people average reg, like, you know, when I know they're not a fish, but I haven't figured out what kind of reg they are yet. I give them my average reg, right? Then I can bump them up or down based on what I see. If over time they come out immaculate, maybe, you know, when I'm looking over them in my database and I see that all their stats line up pretty nicely, maybe they've got 1 or 2 leaks, but just on like 1 or 2 dimensions, then I'll bump them up to good reg. Also, if, you know, over longer term, over larger samples, they are winning, then I'll bump them up to better reg. Of course, we want good sample sizes for that. If I see like 2 or 3 leaks, if I see 3 or 4 leaks, you know, like their C betting's too high, too low, their 3 bets too high, too low, generally too low. It's almost hard to go too high with 3 betting. Going to showdown too much, too little. The showdown numbers, as I talked about before, if those are off, and it's just like, you know, 4, 5, 3 to 5, somewhere in there as far as the leaks go, then I put them as you know, average, because most people have a few leaks. And then as they get, you know, more and more leaks, as the numbers get more and more wacky, like picture the 32-20 guy, you know, someone with the high call percentage, then they get bumped down to the bad reg, right? So that's my makeup. And that's important, I think, because, you know, 70% of the guys in my game are regs. So if they're all just labeled reg, that's not all that useful to me in making quick decisions. And then I break it out, like I was saying before, into a little more one-offs, you might say, as far as stations or rocks. I have a weak player, you know, just a sort of a guy that folds, basically the opposite of a station, someone that just folds easily is another type of label. Then I have the range that goes into sort of the 30 to 45% VPIP territory of lag. Then I go into fish, and I break fish down into bony fish, the super aggro guy, and green, which is the more passive fish. So those are the labels as I break them down. So that's a taste of my world here on 888, and I am really looking forward to doing more of this with you guys, and I will be wrapping this up here. So thanks for watching. This is Mike Gano with Deuces Cracked.